Hello there and welcome to Wyoming Sage. I'm so glad you guys are here with me today. Today I just wanted to walk you through what it looks like on my sourdough baking day. Today I'm going to be making some homemade sourdough sandwich bread, and I'm going to share with you the recipe that I use for sourdough tortillas. These tortillas are soft and chewy and moist. They hold a taco or a grand burrito wonderfully. My family loves them. The night before my sourdough baking day, I feed my starter, and the following morning it is bubbly, active, and ready to go. When making sourdough, you are going to want to invest in a scale. Most sourdough recipes are measured in grams, and using a scale makes for much more accurate results, which are very important when you're making bread. When you start out with a sourdough, I think the best advice I can give you is to look to recipes that you can create well, that have good results for you, and then practice those over and over again. So this bread recipe that I'm using today is not a recipe of my own, but a recipe that I have found to be consistent every time I make it. And I'll put a link to that recipe down below in the description box. So after my bread is ready to go and it's resting, I move on to making my tortillas. This recipe uses 400 grams of all-purpose flour, a half a cup of butter. I've used softened and I've used melted, (14 grams of salt, (200 grams of filtered water, and 200 grams of fed sourdough starter. And mix it all together until it forms a shaggy dough, or a dough that is just coming together. And then let the dough rest for 30 minutes. This allows the flours to soak up the water and for the grains to absorb all the moisture. After the 30 minutes, you're going to want to give the dough a series of folds. I'm going to show you here on my bread dough. So in yeasted dough, normally you knead the dough, but with sourdough, you give it a series of folds by simply picking up one side of the dough and folding it over itself. With sourdough, you want to trap air and bubbles in the dough, keeping it light and fluffy. You never want to smash down or punch the dough down. And by the end of the folding process, your dough has come together to form a ball. It has a smoother surface on top and is ready to do its bulk fermentation. For our tortillas, that's going to be 4 to 12 hours of bulk fermentation time. You need at least 4 hours of good fermentation. That's what I love about this recipe for tortillas, is that you just prepare it in the morning and then let the fermentation do all the work by leaving it out on the counter. And when it's time for dinner, just prepare a floured surface. I love using this silicone mat. It makes for an easy cleanup, and I'll put a link for that down below. You're going to want to divide your dough into 12 equal parts. And I love this handy sourdough scraping tool. I use it to handle all of my sourdoughs, using it to cut or using it to move sourdough. It's fabulous, so I'll put a link down below for that as well. Your sourdough may appear more moist than your yeasted doughs, and that's just how you would want it. So only use as much flour as you really need to keep it from sticking to the mat and your fingers and the rolling pin, but make sure to not overflour it because that would make for a tougher tortilla, and no one wants that. Roll your dough out as thin as possible without breaking. Think window pane thin, where you can almost see through the dough but not quite. When you're ready to cook those tortillas, prepare a piping hot griddle or a skillet. I like to put a little bit of oil on it to keep the tortilla moist. You'll notice that the tortilla starts to form bubbles. And when the tortilla gets quite a few bubbles, that's when it's time to flip. It only takes a minute or so. I just want to thank you guys for joining me here today as I'm restoring home, family, and spirit. One way I love to do that is by feeding my family wholesome and good foods from scratch. I hope you love this recipe. Let me know in the comments down below how it worked out for you. The full recipe will be up on wyomingsage.com with a free printable that you can put in your recipe books. Being fairly new to sourdough, this recipe I shared with you today is pretty foolproof and is one that you could definitely start doing with your beginning sourdough starter. And I just want to encourage you to try new things, to go for it, make some wholesome food for your family, and have fun. I hope you'll come back next week for a new video where I'm constantly striving to restore home, family, and spirit. I'll catch you next time on Wyoming Sage. Love you lots.